did you go to school?
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason moron.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of camera!
There are much more powerful international forces in play.
Is this pink eye? Is this what pink eye is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
Please go outside and look at the moon quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do you slowly.
But I ain't spending any time on it.
Welcome to the Condition Release Program, a podcast that delves into the netherworld of cults, crims and con artists. I'm Jack the Insider, otherwise known as Peter Hoysted for tax purposes.
And I'm Joel Hill, and today we're having a long, hard look at Albanian crime syndicates. Oof, spicy.
Albanian crime syndicates are looming as the world's most powerful and violent transnational groups. They're here in Australia, and wherever they do show up, there's bound to be A, a lot of crime going on, and B, people getting shot to death in the street.
How troubling. So the Albanian crime syndicates are certainly not the only perpetrators committing violent crime on our streets. Let's not pin their blame on them for everything. But as Jack will show, the Albanian syndicates are on the rise. They are pulling their weight, and it looks like they're impossible to stop, Jack. It's the train's in motion.
It'd almost be as hard as stopping you from drinking, Joe.
Oh, you had to have a go. I don't actually have a drinking problem, Jack. I have a beer problem, and it's different. You see, if you put a bottle of vodka in front of me and just waited, it wouldn't move much. It's not a drinking problem because vodka tastes like Russian toilet cleaner. Unless, of course, it's heavily mixed with something that isn't vodka, and then it's drinkable. It's like drinking poison. Beer is delicious. You can just crack a tin, and it's lovely. And you know where this is going. CB Co beer is especially delicious.
Yes.
Don't just take my word for it. Go out and find out yourself.
I wondered when our sponsor was going to be named.
Well, look, to be fair, it is pretty good shit. But they've got a new beer out which is called Hazy. It's in these purple tins. It's just a sort of bloody nice New England pale ale. You'd fucking hate it. It's very fruity. But like fruity in a beer kind of way. People who like fruity beer would understand that. It's not actually fruity. But yeah, it's got that sort of grapefruit pale ale vibe, which is it's lovely. It's fresh. It's just come out. It's delicious. It's a juicy beer. It's a really good NEPA. So go and get some. Basically, it's on the website for $90 a case. You can get that alongside an IPA for $80 if you want, or $17 for a 4-pack at the shops, which is really not bad. Most competing beers are like $25 for a 4-pack. This is a bargain. So yeah, I'd jump on that. Through Coles, I believe.
And to show this is not all about beer, it's actually really all about drugs. And sex trafficking. But I digress, because in order to keep this show running and bring in quality content, we need your help.
Yes, listeners, for as little as $5 a month, you can help us keep this thing of ours going.
Yeah, that's La Cosa Nostra, I should say, which is translated as our thing. And not the Albanians, of course, who probably have a motto, but we don't know what it is.
No, it should be My Cozy Nostrils.
But they do blend together. We'll talk about this later, how the Albanians collaborate a lot with the Italian mafias in various forms, Camorra and Drangheta and La Cosa Nostra, LCN.
Well, simply go to patreon.com/the Condition Release Program and weigh in with a few dollars. You know, look, basically, don't buy yourself a bag this weekend and you can give us basically a year. That would be nice.
In doing so, you'll have a raft of bonus content to enjoy, premium patron-only episodes, Zoom calls with Joel and I, and a ton of stuff, which is almost free. Almost.
Yeah, seriously, if you forgo one bag, you could do an entire year, you'd be getting access to us like nobody's business. Send us DMs and annoy us. You know, you can ask me questions. We go. We do need money, though, so please stop us from falling into the clutches of organised crime. We need to pay rent. We really do.
Yeah, please, listeners. Joel could be shot like a dog in the street, and I might have to go and live in Doha, and the heat will play merry hell with my skin.
You'll look like Eric Trump. So that's enough begging for us. But now, because it's time to get on with that rabbit hole on organised Albanian crime syndicates.
There you go.
As we said in our premium episode from 2 weeks back in previewing this episode, there are some uncomfortable moments when talking about ethnically based crime groups. Ooh.
Yeah, there are many such groups active in Australia. Lebanese, the Russians have been active in Australia for decades, especially in Melbourne's southeast. There are Afghan gangs, Lebanese gangs, and of course the Italian syndicates. LCN, we mentioned before, the Sicilian mafia hasn't had a lot of influence in Australia, but Ndrangheta, the Calabrian mafia, which has been active in and around Melbourne's fruit and vegetable markets for decades, and in regional Victoria and New South Wales.
I thought it was just a
Griffith.
stereotype. Yeah, Griffith, yeah, I saw like an ABC thing on that, but like the idea that you got the gangsters sitting around having coffee at fruit and vegetable markets, I always just thought that was a joke.
No, it's standover extortion records. They're not there. I mean, they're only there to cause trouble. But they've been around for a while. Look, in many ways, the Albanian syndicates are similar and sometimes work hand in hand with Ndrangheta. They share many things in common. Both evolved from clans in impoverished areas where mistrust of the state and poverty drove people towards the clans for protection, and in many cases a degree of economic certainty.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now, we have no issues with the people of Albania. Albanian is a demonym, not a race.
Demons?
And Albania, not demons, that is what we call people from a certain country, a demonym. And Albania is a country under Maoist dictator Enver Hoxha, became the sort of North Korea of Europe for many years. His one party, the Party of Labour, and I only just found out this Labour without a U, which is very, very rare and only shared with the Australian Labor Party. But the Party of Labour of Albania, without a U, had once embraced the Soviet Union and received aid and grain shipments from the Soviets. But in the mid-1960s, Hoxha shunned the Soviet Union and turned instead to Mao's China. Hoxha condemned the Soviets for its invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968. It turned to China, who themselves had gone into diplomatic isolation during the Cultural Revolution. And China remained Albania's only diplomatic ally in the whole wide world. But when Nixon visited China in 1971, Hoxha claimed China had betrayed Albania.
This guy's so fucking moody.
Yeah, he was.
Just calm down.
After some angry back and forth, China's aid to Albania ended in that same year, 1971, leaving Albania under Hoxha without an ally and no major trading partner.
He's just like a leader who likes taking tantrums at the expense of his country.
Absolute rat bag.
Don't do that.
Political and religious repression in Albania raged during this period, with an estimated 25,000 extrajudicial killings. Followers of Albania's predominant religion, Islam, were also persecuted.
Oh, that's how you make friends.
Hoxha said.
Cool.
The only religion is Albanian.
Wow. That's yeah. I mean, look, I like an agnostic when I find one, but like at the same time, people want to practice. You got to let them practice. I mean, it's
big Islamic population and a big Roman Catholic population too.
Yeah.
And many of those face persecution, particularly the Muslims.
How pointless.
And state torture was commonplace. Hoxha died in 1985, and the regime realised it had to drag itself out from isolation. When Nicolae Ceausescu was executed in an anti-communist revolution in Romania in 1989, Hoxha's hand-picked successor decided to speed up the pace of political reforms, more to save his own neck. But, if they did that to Ceausescu, they could do it to me.
They could. And also, just how good is the word Ceausescu? It's one that John Oliver says really well. I love just that word. It's just a great word. Ceausescu. And you look at the spelling and you're like, how the fuck am I going to deal with that? And then someone says it and you're like, I still don't know how that works out. Anyway, look up his name. It's bizarre spelling.
Anyway, elections took place in Albania in 1991, and Alia, the then ruler and successor of Hoxha's, his ruling Labour Party, won, but there was no turning back the tide. And in 1992, just a year later, the Democratic Party won a new round of elections. The transition to a free economy was beset with corruption, a sort of pint-sized version of Yeltsin's cronyism and state theft in the old Soviet Union. And this led to further unrest and social upheaval in Albania.
Yeah.
And finally, in 1998, Albania ratified a new constitution which promoted democratic elections and the rule of law and guaranteed fundamental human rights. But after decades of economic catastrophe, religious and political persecution, Albania remains a nation with one of the lowest GDP per capita in all Europe. I think it's number 5. The embrace of capitalism has generally been good for Albanians, but with it comes some negative effects, including the rise of criminal cartels engaged in human trafficking, drug smuggling, and political crimes. It is little wonder then that Albania would, in part at least, turn to crime and export its criminal activities around the world, and notably in Australia. Albania is such a hub of smuggling and drug trafficking now, it has been acknowledged as Europe's first narco state.
Ugh.
It is little wonder then that Albania would, in part, at least turn to crime and export its criminal activities around the world, and notably in Australia. Albania is such a hub of smuggling and drug trafficking now, it has been acknowledged as Europe's first narco state. And there is a long history to Albanian migration to Australia, going all the way back to the 19th century. The Albanian diaspora in Australia includes settlements in Adelaide, Perth, Sydney and Melbourne, and Shepparton, where the biggest expat population exists.
Nice. So in the 2016 census, there were 4,041 Australians who identified as having been born in Albania, and a further 15,901 who identified as being of Albanian heritage, maybe, sort of second gens or something. In August 2020, a crowd of approximately 100 mainly Albanians protested lockdowns in the Melbourne suburb of Dandenong, but otherwise there's no real links to anti-vax groups or the broader freedom movement, just, had a gutful.
Yeah, that's on my reading reports, the same thing. This group just hit the streets frustrated with lockdown provisions, as many people were, of course, and especially those in lower socioeconomic groups.
Yeah,
also,
I don't blame
living in Dandenong is hard work, mate.
Yet, I haven't heard good
particularly
reports.
under those circumstances. So they all got out in the streets. There were supposed to be a few Serbs, but mainly Albanians who.
They had a bit of a chat.
Police got involved, and I think a few fines were handed out, which made them even crosser. But but that was just lockdowns. There's no sort of connection with the Cooker movement, and most Albanians, 4,000 of them in Australia, live good lives. That's really not the point we're trying to make here.
It's not those Albanians or any others around Australia that are the problem, right? It is the Albanians who have come to this country more recently, rorting Australia's immigration laws that are the problem.
Yes, so let's dive into what they get up to and how these recent arrivals in Australia are changing the criminal environment here. The Albanian mafia is known as Shqiptare, which sounds quite exotic, but really it is just a translation of the Italian term mafia into Albanian.
It kind of sounds like the slur for white Australians. Skippy.
Right.
You Skippy.
Yeah.
Skippy. Oh, Skippy.
Yeah. SHQ, so that's going to be a tricky one to pronounce.
It's a mouthful, yeah.
And it's a generic term. The Shqiptare are broken up into organisations, basically around clan and family associations and geographic locations in Albania. Many of the clan-based groups lie in the northwest of the country. And the Australian Crime Intelligence documents prepared by the Australian Crime Commission outline what they refer to as Albanian organised criminal groups' 5-stage life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
First, they say, people are recruited in their home regions in Albania, sometimes on the false promise of finding work abroad. Second, they are brought into the country using false visa claims and fraudulent documents. Third, they manage to remain in Australia by taking advantage of lengthy visa reviews and trusted registered migration agents. Some Albanians apply to stay in Australia by claiming that blood feuds back home would endanger them if they returned.
Aww.
And fourth, they carry out criminal activities. Fifth, they are arrested, convicted, and their visas are cancelled. And then you just start all over again with different people.
Yes, exactly. So according to the ACCC report, often applicants will apply for a particular visa knowing it will be rejected. So one of the Australian intelligence files reads, but they exploit the lengthy appeal process so they can generate evidence to support a different visa application.
Let's see how the 5-stage life cycle system works in practice. This comes from an AFP media release dated 30 September 2022.
6 people, including a real estate agent, have been arrested under an AFP-led investigation into an Albanian organised crime syndicate allegedly operating multiple cannabis grow houses in Melbourne rental properties. Naughty. The AFP launched this investigation into the organised crime syndicate in April 2021 and identified an Aspendale Gardens man, 36 years old, the alleged leader of the syndicate, from information obtained during Operation Ironside. We should talk about that briefly in a bit. Police executed a warrant at the man's Aspendale Gardens home in June last year, 7th of June 2021, as part of the first phase of Operation Ironside, where they allegedly seized an Anom device, along with $270,000 and 5 designer watches, allegedly concealed in a roof cavity. Now, let's pause for a second there and say what ANOM is and what Operation Ironside was.
Yeah, ANOM was a joint agency, crime agency effort to create a method of criminals communicating in an encrypted manner that would be safe from prying ears, shall we say, of law enforcement. And they set it up and encourage a large number of organised criminal figures to use it.
Yep.
And it led to mass arrests throughout the Middle East, in Australia, in the United States, etc. And in this case, an Aspendale Gardens man.
Well, let's not forget how funny this is, because it is a brief breakaway. We have covered this before on the podcast. But intelligence organisations got together, created a product, which was a phone, which had software on it, which was encrypted, to make sure their communications between themselves were all safe from prying ears of law enforcement. Except for the fact that the devices were law enforcement and they were being listened to actively, and it led to all of their downfall. Now, I know that's what you said, but I just want to emphasize how funny that is. That is incredible. And like they even did things like charge for it. They made sure that the guys thought it was legitimate. It is one of the most brutal things ever. I'm not all about snitches and ratting, but at the same time, that is a stroke of like intelligence genius that I don't think we'll ever see again. So Operation Ironside always makes you giggle because fuck, man, they really played them.
And the criminals who were promoting ANOM, they were. There are a number of Australians in the Middle East now, in Turkey, who were actually promoting ANOM.
Yeah, and they would have looked like the biggest assholes because they're going, man, these phones are so good. They're super safe. And they're fucking, amazing. Anyway,
so these guys all of a sudden were in significant trouble.
Yeah, everyone's fucked because they've got a massive evidence thing because anyway, so that's pretty funny. So the AFP-led investigation, codenamed Operation Ironside South Valhalla, badass, identified and dismantled 2 alleged cannabis grow houses located in Keysborough, connected to the syndicate with assistance from Victoria Police, our friends in VicPol. 81 cannabis plants, harmless, weighing more than 96 kilos, nice work, were seized from the properties in June 2021. I'm guessing that included all the stems. A 40-year-old Keysborough man and a 24-year-old Noble Park man, who are alleged syndicate members, were arrested in connection to the grow houses. Very sad. On August 2nd, 2022, the Aspendale Gardens man, a 46-year-old Burwood East man, and a 23-year-old Dandenong woman were arrested. I think Aspendale Gardens is a very nice-sounding suburb.
Burwood East is probably a little bit nicer.
That sounds shit. I like there's no gardens in Burwood East.
And he was a real estate agent. We'll get to him in a minute.
Oh, the real estate agent. I love that.
This is a fairly routine crime. Dope houses, homes where cannabis is grown in large quantities are fairly common. Crime syndicates control them, and one means they have of recruiting people to front or occupy the dope houses by patrolling casinos and poker machine venues for gamblers in trouble.
That's so fucked up.
The syndicates will pay the gamblers' debts, but the trade-off is the gambler will become a front for the dope house.
That's so fucked up.
But there's something a bit different going on here. So the real estate agent, the one from Burwood East, mentioned in the AFP release, was 59-year-old Joe Tomino. In May, Tomino pleaded guilty to assisting a criminal organisation and possession of methamphetamines after he was accused of securing rental properties for an Albanian drug ring to use as cannabis grow houses. Tomino of Malvern East, not Burwood East, Malvern. Yes, I remember thinking, that's quite a nice suburb, Malvern East. Yeah. Was accused by Australian Federal Police of being a key facilitator for a drug gang by hand-picking vacant properties that would allegedly be used to cultivate marijuana.
Yeah.
Some of those properties were chosen because they were owned by overseas investors and unlikely to be inspected.
That's a skill set to have, Well done.
And this is another level of sophistication. The Australian Federal Police believe Tomino worked for the 36-year-old Avdi Mola. He's the Aspendale Gardens builder, who is believed to be the ringleader. Investigators allege Mola, who was born in Albania, is connected to known international organised crime figures in his native country and was coordinating the drug cultivation operation in suburban Melbourne. Mola was charged with directing the activities of a criminal organisation and drug cultivation. Perron and the woman were charged with drug cultivation. A 6th man has pleaded not guilty to cannabis cultivation. Besides Tomino, the remaining 5 charged are yet to have their days in court.
Oh, okay.
Here is another story taken from the Herald Sun, Joel.
All right. So in June 2021, Albert Bieber, 33, not like Justin Bieber, Biba, was sentenced to a minimum of 7 years jail before the Supreme Court, having pleaded guilty to a charge of manslaughter. Ooh. So Bieber caused the death, that's very nice wording, of Andrew Tumayan?
Yeah, Tumayan.
When he shot the 28-year-old in the chest as he was leaving 30 Wantina Road, Ringwood, about 1 a.m. on April 17, 2018. On that morning, Tumayan and another man had gone into the property armed with a crowbar and a pair of secateurs with the intention of ripping off a crop growing at the Ringwood address. And when they entered the home, they triggered motion sensor alarms which notified the tenant, who duly telephoned Bieber. I'm guessing the tenant was one of these poor bastards who were on the hook for gambling. The two men determined the plants were not mature enough to warrant being cut and left the property empty-handed. That's very sad. And it was said in court that Bieber was not connected to the dope house, but he was spotted within minutes. Not connected? Questionable. Jumped in his car in Box Hill with a loaded gun, and when he arrived at the Ringwood address, he shot Tumayan, who fled on the scene on foot before collapsing in the driveway of a nearby home and dying there. Very sad. So Bieber was charged with a murder, but pleaded guilty to manslaughter, which the judge said was at the higher end of the offence for the obvious reasons that he arrived at the scene.
Arrived at the scene with a firearm. A firearm. So that shows there's a fair amount of intent there.
He pled out. I mean, he saved the court some time, and they gave him a pat on the back for it.
Now, 2 weeks before the killing, Albert Bieber had appeared at the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, where he successfully stalled his deportation, claiming he feared for his life if he was sent home due to the anger of an ex-girlfriend's family.
Gotta wonder what he did.
Albert Bieber, an Albanian national, arrived in Australia in August 2013 using a Greek passport and a false name. And even though his fake identity was discovered, Bieber was later granted several temporary visas under his real name. In April 2014, court files revealed he married a woman in a sham wedding to apply for a partner visa, and when this was rejected, he used the visa appeal process to continue obtaining bridging visas for years. Almost 5 years later, he killed Tumayan, and Bieber was also believed to be involved in other forms of drug trafficking.
Okay.
Now, Bieber has a brother, and as reported by an investigation team with the Nine Media headed by Nick McKenzie, published in July, let's hear about a little bit more about Bieber's brother, Joel.
Yeah, so Bieber's brother's name, Diego Bieber. Is that a traditionally Albanian name?
Yeah.
Who had also entered a sham relationship after arriving in Australia and embarked on a number of visa appeals to stall his deportation, stalked and threatened the homicide squad detectives who had jailed his brother.
Wow.
Hectic move. That shows brass balls. So court files released to this masthead, being the Nine masthead, after a series of applications show that Diego Bieber tried to plant several kilograms of cocaine from the UK at the Melbourne home of a homicide squad detective, which honestly sounds like a gift, but I understand what they're up to here. But still, several kilos,
I know.
That's a fun weekend until you're dead. He was arrested in August 2020 for stalking and intimidating the officer, offences to which he pleaded guilty in the Victorian County Court. They seem to plead guilty a lot in April 2022. And he has not been charged with any other offences, including drug-related offences. So evidence presented to the court claimed that Diego had planned to plant a large amount of cocaine at the home of a homicide detective. Like I said, sounds like a gift to me. Why can't I have such misfortune?
Diego Bieber was released into the community and retained his bridging visa for more than 12 months.
What?
Hello, criminal justice system. Hello, Home Affairs Department.
Are you serious?
Now, the business of organised grow, yes, I am. The business of organised grow houses cultivating marijuana for sale on illicit markets is at the bottom end of the scale in terms of criminal intent.
Yeah, fair enough.
A grow house is often used as a bank. Get some money in from the sale of cannabis and use that in turn to finance other drug smuggling operations, most notably in the crowded market over retail sales of coke and methamphetamine.
Yeah, fair enough.
The problem starts from the fact that the price of cocaine is too high in Australia relative to other Western nations.
Just too high.
Here, cocaine sells from between 300 to 500, sometimes 600 a gram, depending on quality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Australian traffickers of cocaine don't need to deal with that price so high, don't need to deal with Armalite-toting South American and Mexican cartels.
Yeah,
they can make ridiculous profits by importing cocaine from end-user countries in the US and Europe where the street price is 1/6 of what it is here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the lure of massive cash profits has drawn organised criminal syndicates to Australia, including the fairly recent arrival of the Albanian mafia, who, with reckless opportunists come up against the Commission,
Ooh.
a criminal construct established by the Comanchero OMCG, who set the wholesale and retail prices of cocaine and have an established network of distributors.
Yeah, you always wonder why the price of coke never seems to go down, and then you find out, of course, cartels fix prices. That's what they do.
It's cartel behaviour.
It's the textbook definition of a
Australian
fucking cartel.
Competition and Consumer Commission, come on in.
I know, honestly, anyway. So I don't want to. Yeah. So on June 27th, convicted drug trafficker Alan Muradian was sitting in his car in Bondi Junction, hanging out. Broad daylight at 8:30 a.m. with the streets swollen with cars and pedestrians, the Comanchero associate was ambushed and shot dead by 2 assailants. Very rude. Very rude.
On 20th September, just this week as we record this, the accused mastermind behind the execution of Muradian has now been charged along with an alleged accomplice. We won't name either man here, but readers may well be aware of the identity, and I'd suggest the involvement of Albanian criminals is not far away in this instance.
So police will allege the 42-year-old male and 31-year-old male themselves did not carry out the act. They gave the go-ahead or the instructions for it to occur.
In 2011, Muradian, 48, was convicted and sentenced to prison for his role in the Golden Gun cocaine smuggling ring, so named because a gold-plated .357 caliber pistol was seized from the Wollongong home of one of Muradian's associates. The source of the ring's cocaine was not Medellin, Colombia, or Los Mochis, Mexico. It was Chicago.
Yep.
The old days and ways of catch and kill your own, a particular philosophy embraced by the New South Wales Police decades ago to look the other way while rival gangs shot one another to a standstill, was not a valid proposition then, much less now. If we needed a reminder, the photograph of children, I don't know if our listeners have seen this, this photograph of children on their way to school, walking to school, with the body of Ferenc David Stemler, a 28-year-old man who'd been shot dead. It was an unfortunate moment where forensic examiners had the body was still there, covered, blood everywhere, and there's, primary school age kids just wandering past going, oh, this is just normal.
Yep.
Because it's getting a little bit normal in Sydney's West, all this stuff.
Well, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Look, the New South Wales Police have created a task force. In fact, it predates the murder of Muradian, and they will make arrests. They've already made some. They'll continue to make arrests. But those who traffic in cocaine and parlay in bloodshed should receive life sentences. But this is extraordinarily difficult police work, and it will take months, if not years, before prosecutions begin.
Yeah, and unfortunately in this situation, we just have to concede that while these sort of sky-high profits are available to drug traffickers and suppliers, politicians and police are playing this sort of Sisyphean whack-a-mole game, because for every one the cop's going to pull up, there's going to be 5 others willing to take their place. There's too much money in it, and it's too easy. So
yeah, Australia has a serious appetite for cocaine and a long history of using it.
We love it.
But because we are a relatively small market compared to Europe and North America, there are no real established distribution networks between the Mexican cartels or the South Americans.
Thank God
and
for
to
that.
go off on a tangent for a moment, the power balance changed between the Colombian, Venezuelan and Bolivian cartels. We'll all remember Pablo Escobar, and he seemed to be, the world's worst man at one particular point. And of course, Colombia. And originally the cartels in South America, led by Escobar, used the Mexican cartels to smuggle coke into its largest market, North America, United States. The Mexican cartels were paid cash up front for their role in getting the product to the marketplace. This led to some really strange outcomes that are still with us today, Joel.
Okay.
Escobar was a massive friend of animals.
Okay.
He had zoos. And he didn't just, like your average drug trafficker, have a lion or a tiger.
Fuck it. Yeah,
he had sort of fairly comprehensive zoos, including hippopotamuses or hippopotami.
Hippopotami, yes. Hippopotami, indeed.
And then when it all showed itself when Escobar's empire collapsed, these zoos just had to be opened up, and hippos escaped.
That's not good.
Yeah, now Colombia has a hippopotamus problem.
They kill people.
Have you seen that footage of the boat on a river, and this like a torpedo is coming towards them, and it's actually a hippo.
They're fast.
That was actually filmed in Colombia.
I haven't seen that video you're talking about, but what I do know is they're responsible for a lot of deaths.
It's terrifying, and it's going this hippo is going as fast as the boat, and so they have to rev it up and get the hell out of there.
Terrifying.
That's one of the shall we say, secondary sort of effects of of the collapse of the Escobar Empire.
Fucking
Colombia
ridiculous.
now has a hippo problem. It didn't have a hippo problem before.
And now it does. Yeah.
But anyway, the
if they get
balance
their nose in the
shifted because the Mexicans said to the cartels in South America, look, don't pay us in cash, pay us in coke.
Oh, wow, okay.
And that just changed the whole dynamic. That meant that the Mexican cartels, led by the Sinaloa under El Chapo Guzman, quickly became the providers, relegating the South American cartels to little more than farmers.
Interesting.
And the power balance just changed. It really just kind of overnight when that happened. And they're quite clever. People like Guzman, who now will spend the rest of his life in a federal prison in the United States, were very, very clever about how they got their cocaine into the United States, firstly, but then basically controlled the whole distribution by being paid in cocaine. That meant they were just suppliers.
Yeah, fair call. So what we've seen is other groups quickly establishing territory. Ndrangheta was said to control about 80% of the cocaine market in Europe, which is fucking insane because that's billions and billions of dollars. 80% that's insane.
It's crazy.
So this is what we see from international crime syndicates. They collaborate. It's these sort of coalitions of convenience, they'd say, to assist with criminal operations and launder money. Because you can't keep all that under your pillowcase.
That's when all of these international crime syndicates are considered. That's their biggest problem. We'll talk a little bit about this, but it is their biggest problem. What to do with all the cash they make?
Give it to me.
And you go anywhere near the United States financial system, you stand a prospect of being charged with money laundering, which comes with a 20-year jail sentence.
That's annoying.
In the United States. So a number of them are looking at sort of Central and South American governments, particularly around Honduras, and getting around the banking system that way. But for them, it's their own game of whack-a-mole. They'll have to keep moving it on. But back to the Australian appetite for cocaine. And the possession of cocaine was first criminalised in New South Wales in 1924.
Tragedy.
And Victoria followed suit within a year. It would take another 4 decades before marijuana and heroin were listed as prohibited substances in this country. But the banning in the mid-20s led to a crime wave in Australia, the likes of which we've never seen before or since. Murder rates and rates of violent personal crime skyrocketed. In the wake of cocaine's fresh prohibition, the black market for cocaine added to the rich tableau of Australian criminal history. Luminaries such as Tilly Devine, Chow Hayes, and Squizzy Taylor and Snowy Cutmore, who shot each other to death in a working man's cottage in Carlton in 1927. They made their names and their awful reputations over the white powder stimulant, recently prohibited. And in terms of crime statistics, that decade, the 1920s, was our Everest in terms of crime stats. Challenged but never beaten in our history, even with the introduction of heroin in the 1970s. And we do see another spike in the 80s around
Wasn't great.
But nothing like the 1920s. And prior to its criminalisation, cocaine had been available over the counter in pharmacies. You could just walk over there and go, mate, I'm feeling a little bit down. What do you got over there? What do you got that's going to, you could buy it in powder form, you could form it in these sort of wonderful elixirs that are, tonics and what have you, unguents. No, not unguents. But,
maybe some cocaine gummies would be quite nice.
Yeah, so it was all just available. And when it became a prohibited substance, Australia just lurched into a crime spree.
Well, we got sad.
Everyone's sleeping better.
Our weekends were ruined.
And look,
Scott
it was
Morrison
all
said
pretty
that on Destroy the
ugly.
Weekend. I mean,
cocaine distribution, illicit distribution after prohibition, often, not mainly, but often would occur through prostitution. So the prostitutes, people, scumbags like Tilly Devine, who were kind of lauded. Oh, I guess they were. She was lovely in her own way, but she fucking horror show.
Yeah.
She would basically get girls hooked on coke, and that was how she would pay them in coke.
That's rude. Yeah, that doesn't work for me.
Anyway,
I can't imagine getting addicted to coke. I tell you what, if I ever have a night out on the irregular substances, the next day I'm like, I never want to touch that again. That was a terrible decision. I have no money and I feel sick.
Yeah,
this is awful. Yeah. I don't know how you get addicted to it.
I remember a former colleague of mine who said, I've never been so lonely as I was when I stopped using cocaine. Before that, he had lots of friends around him because he was always buying it. And then when he stopped using it, because his accountant rang him up and said, mate, you have no money. Yeah. And they went through his ATM extractions, and it was 200 here, 200 there. This was quite some time ago. Stopped taking it, and no mates.
Yep. No mates.
About that.
Yep. 100%.
Anyway, the Albanian groups in Australia will use house grows of cannabis to fund more lucrative and dangerous activities, namely the traffic in cocaine. A little bit of meth as well.
Yeah.
We've already said coke is too expensive in Australia.
Totally agree.
There are reasons for that. As we said before, we'll just touch on this again. The Commission is a Comanchero creation. The Outlaw Motorcycle Gang Comanchero and its affiliates set the price and oversee the distribution networks. They have created a monopoly and are raking off the profits. And woe betide anyone who would seek to bring drugs into the country and set up their own distribution networks without the permission of the Commission.
Ooh, true.
But the Albanian syndicates have no interest in abiding by the Commission's rules. Commission? We don't want no stinking commission.
You went there.
Yeah, I did. Anyway, but they don't fear the Comanchero or any of the Comanchero's friends. And that is one of the major reasons there have been a spate of gangland shootings in Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah, fair enough.
Tony Saggers is a former high-ranking officer of Britain's National Crime Agency who has spent years on the trail of Albanian criminals. Saggers told the international group of investigative journalists, the Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, CCRP, what did he say to them, Joe? Or what did he say about them?
What did he say? He said, they put a lot of emphasis on being respected for what they do and for doing it well. And just doing it isn't enough for them. They like to dominate by gaining control of volume activity, proving they're the best, and satisfying customer demand. They sound like good businessmen.
Well, how's the Commission going to deal with that? Here comes an efficient competitor.
That is problematic. Yeah, we don't like that.
Saggers and other law enforcement in the UK have been busy in recent times. It is estimated Albanian syndicates control 75% of Britain's brothels.
Ooh, wow, okay. That's
According to analysis in 2012, the syndicates made £15 million a year from brothels in Soho alone.
Jesus.
But in the last few years, the Albanian mafia was involved more in drug trafficking than in prostitution, and they sold more than just get your head around this, 500 tonnes of drugs in London alone.
That's a lot.
Due to their expansive and deep involvement in drug trading, the Albanian mafia has climbed its way to the top of a €5 billion market.
Okay.
The group uses its connections in South America to ship high-quality, low-price cocaine, heroin and marijuana to European countries, specifically, more often than not, the United Kingdom.
It's a great place to do coke because everything else is so fucking miserable. Sorry.
Yeah.
An article in The Guardian showed that the, quote, the latest UK criminal threat assessment says that the Albanians are unusually skilled at developing relationships and forging links with other OCGs.
Organised crime groups,
crime groups, yep. The cooperation between Albanians and other existing groups has aided in the rapid growth of drug trafficking throughout the United Kingdom's residential regions. And the price is cheaper. Much
Albanian
cheaper.
Crime syndicates are active in China, profiting from drug trafficking and the sex industry. Ooh. China, just think about that for a minute.
That is a big
they
marketplace.
Just drag you away and pop a bullet in you.
But there's just so much money there, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't think of China as being a big drug destination, but I must say the one-child policy really did make the prostitution thing.
A lot of the precursors for methamphetamine come from Guangzhou.
Yeah, it's so true.
So they'll be all over that.
Big meth makers.
A 2013 report by security services and police on Albanian organised crime in Greece concluded that the Albanian mafia controls approximately 50% of human trafficking into the country, 80% of the retail distribution of heroin, and 90% of the importation of illegal small arms into Greece, and that about 50% of armed robberies of homes and businesses, agbergs, in the country were committed by Albanians.
Mate, you're already making enough money, aren't you? Like, you're trafficking people, you've got heroin, you're selling guns.
They do like committing crime, don't they?
Like, fucking hell.
In Italy, Albanian crime syndicates have established coalitions of convenience with the Sicilian Calabrian mafia as well as the Neapolitan Camorra. This has enhanced the Albanians' reputations and power. Various other ethnic crime groups in Poland and in Russia Russian mafia won't deal with the Albanians because they are too violent.
What?
These guys are too violent. Imagine that.
That is terrifying because the Russians are known for not exactly being polite.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. Yeah, so in a very familiar country, the Netherlands, Albanian crime groups lead the importation of cocaine from South America and through this sort of transshipment via the port of Rotterdam. And also the further distribution to other European countries from Amsterdam. So, using it as a bit of a hub. But in addition to cocaine trafficking, here's a predictable one. The Albanian mafia in the Netherlands are also engaged in human trafficking and less predictable.
They love a bit of fraud too.
Property fraud.
They do love a bit of fraud.
I'm going to sell you this bike. Just kidding. I'm keeping the money. I don't know.
You thought this was your house.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. So in June 2019, the government of the Netherlands requested the suspension of visa-free travel for Albanians. Interesting. Citing claims the Albanian mafia is free to move across Europe because of the visa-free European Union scheme.
Yeah, the EU with your, travel wherever you want to
the
around
Schengen
Europe
zone.
And so forth.
Once you get in, you can just fucking go around.
Leave itself open. When you've got someone who's trying it on. Albanian crime syndicates have long established ties with the American mob, LCN and Dregata. In the 1980s, Albanian syndicate boss Zevded, Joey, we'll call him Joey, that was his nickname, by the way, Zevded Joey Leica, established a reputation that even had the mafia fearful.
That is incredibly concerning. So, in the 1992 book Contract Killer, written by William Hoffman and Lake Headley, it was noted Joey Leica, quote, didn't like Italians and they left him alone because he was so violent. Like Japanese kamikazes, his heavy hitter mobsters would go after John Gotti, Paul Castellano, or even President Reagan if Leica gave the word. There was no way to stop people like that, and mafiosi even knew it. That's concerning. Meanwhile, in Australia, Victoria Police Commander Paul O'Halloran said they're highly adept and can show extreme violence. They are regarded by his detectives as highly dangerous. Yeah, they sound highly dangerous.
So we can see a fairly rapid rise. This has all happened really in the last 20 to 30 years, probably, definitely since Hoxha died and this little hermit country in Europe opened up, and like Yeltsin's Soviet Union, Russian Federation collapsing. It was just what the economy transitioned into was just cronyism and corruption.
Yeah, it's sort of exactly how the transition to capitalism worked in Russia, and it hasn't recovered.
So who are those people? Let's have a look at them. Let's take a look at one of the case studies from the ACC's documents, Joe. All
right, so Tom Doshi is a powerful Albanian businessman and politician tied to the country's prime minister. He's suspected of leading an organised criminal group implicated in money laundering, drug trafficking, and other offences in Australia. So we've been through that. The clan is among others from Škoda, a county in northwest Albania that have systematically abused Australia's immigration system to build, quote, an entire Albanian organised crime criminal structure across South Australia, according to the reports. It's right for the picking, that place. The files describe how, since 2000, Albanian clans have used identity fraud and familial links to migration agents to move their people into Australia, setting up cells in Adelaide, Melbourne, Perth, and elsewhere. Doshi is described in the files as the head of a syndicate, principally consisting of his extended family. Though the documents contain no details about his specific activities, they note that 8 of his relatives have been implicated in drug and money laundering investigations, in some cases as primary targets.
Yeah.
That's, strong legal wording there. His relatives are said in the reports to have gained Australian visas using spurious documentation. So much legal wording here. One is facing drug trafficking charges.
Yeah, there's the Australian Crime Commission for you. In fact, split infinities everywhere. But never mind. Doshi, who spent years in both countries, has not been charged with any crimes in Australia. In his homeland, he had built a business empire that has benefited extensively from state contracts. Kind of like what we were talking about before. It was designated persona non grata by the United States in 2018 for, and I quote, involvement in significant corruption, and forced out of his parliamentary seat in 2021 following years of high-profile scandal. His alleged involvement in the Australian criminal network has never been previously released until the ACC released these docs.
Quote, I have never in my life been involved in any way with drug smuggling, human trafficking, arms trafficking, money laundering, or illegal immigration in Australia or Albania or anywhere else. Doshi wrote in response to reporters' questions.
Hey, we didn't mention arms trafficking.
I was going to say that. That was a comprehensive list, wasn't it, champ? In fact,
well, no one mentioned arms trafficking. What do you got to say about arms trafficking?
Whoops. Yeah. No, you said that. I didn't. Yeah, shut up. So, in fact, as a member of the Albanian parliament, I have been a strong supporter of the fight against these types of activities. Whew. Okay. Quote, again, I have no connection to any Albanian criminal clans based in Australia or to any Albanian criminals anywhere, he wrote. My siblings and their children total 33. Okay, well done. Your siblings and everyone's rooting? Great. Congratulations. I have little to no contact with them other than to encounter them at funerals or family celebrations.
No.
What? Okay. Yeah. So you're just kind of a dick.
It's just pretty much how The Godfather works, isn't it, too? Weddings, funerals, baptisms. Yeah. Anyway,
everyone's breeding.
The ACC documents also, part of that case study, revealed that a woman with familial links to Doshi is working in Australia as a registered migration agent who, and this is quoting from the documents again, likely facilitates criminal activity by achieving migration outcomes for syndicate members arrested for cannabis cultivation and or are closely connected to cocaine trafficking.
So the files go into greater detail of two of Doshi's nephews. The two men are said to be members of the Leshy drug trafficking syndicate, Leshy, a gang named after another family which the documents say uses funds from cannabis grow house sales to import cocaine and meth into Australia. As you said before, he's like a bank, right?
Yep.
Police arrested one of Doshi's nephews in Adelaide in March 2022 and charged him with drug trafficking and money laundering after finding cocaine worth $1.6 million concealed inside a smoke machine. That'd be a fucking good disco if they just pumped that out. Charlie into the dance floor.
Hey, redundant. I'm talking a lot. I'm really talking a lot, and I feel really, really confident.
My jaw is killing
fantastic.
me.
I really do think I'm fantastic.
Does anyone have some gum?
Yeah. But you're not fantastic. You're on coke.
You're just mediocre and high.
The nephew had started visiting Europe frequently after acquiring Australian citizenship almost a decade earlier, the intelligence files say. Along the way, he and his family bought up extensive Australian properties, raising questions for investigators about his income. Hey, buddy, you don't work, man. Where you get all that?
Where's this money come from, mate?
Court officials did not respond to questions about the current status of the case. Now, Doshi's other nephew is no longer in Australia, but is suspected to still be involved in Albanian organised crime and high-level drug trafficking. He, too, has had numerous brushes with the law. According to his Australian immigration case file seen by reporters, he has a history of criminal convictions in the country dating back to 2012. And the file cites a minister who rejected his visa application as saying, I reasonably suspect that he has been or is a member of a group or organisation involved in criminal conduct. 2012 wasn't Home Affairs. It would have been immigration. I'm going to say Peter Dutton, but I may be wrong. But the minister's gone, no. On advice, you can't stay.
Yeah, you know good. So back in Albania, Doshi was accused in 2016 of assaulting a traffic police officer. The officer declined to press charges, and the outcome of the case is unknown. That is shady as fuck, obviously.
Yeah, just stood over him.
There's an implication there. His career has been marked by violence encounters with the law, and accusations of corruption. In a 2009 embassy cable published by WikiLeaks, a US diplomat serving in Albania included Doshi at the top of a list of legislators, quote, with ties to organised crime, describing him as the richest MP in the country and adding that he was suspected of trafficking narcotics. Well. Doshi's first encounter with the law took place in his early 20s. In 1990, while performing his mandatory military service, he was handed a 1-year prison term for disorderly conduct after a drunken brawl in the coastal city of Durrës. Durrës? Ended in one of his groups stabbing a man. The conviction didn't stop Doshi's rise. By the mid-1990s, he'd broken into the construction and fuel sectors as Albania underwent a rapid transition to free market capitalism. Like you said,
going on here? This is
Russian sort of sell-off of state assets and things.
Yeah, very similar, and gave rise to, great, powerful crime groups. Doshi established a home in Australia in 1997, buying multiple properties in Adelaide and living between the two countries for a number of years. It was during this period that he allegedly put in place the criminal syndicate identified by Australian investigators. But he remained active in his homeland. His career took its biggest leap in 2000 when his firm, Aldosh, won tenders to buy 2 major state-run companies in the dairy and pharmaceutical sectors. Big pharma job.
Oh, no, because it's ironic because there's farmers and big pharma. I mean, that's double funny. I'm going to take that.
Doshi became active in politics. He secured his first term in Parliament in 2005 as a candidate with the Socialists. He's a socialist job.
Yeah.
One of Albania's major political parties to represent his native city of Skoda. In a scandalous, widely reported incident 3 years later, Doshi allegedly assaulted a journalist who had asked for an interview about his allegedly fake university diploma. Oh, we've all got one of those.
Oh, yeah.
A US embassy cable from the time described how bystanders in the hotel cafe, perhaps cowed by Doshi's known violent streak, simply let the attack happen.
Oh, that is upsetting. So the journalist did not press charges. You can see there's a bit of a pattern forming here. And Doshi's political rise continued unabated. But in 2009, a US embassy cable cited a disgruntled socialist MB who complained that Doshi, whom he called a thug, had won leverage over the head of the party, Edi Rama, after investing €500,000 into its recent parliamentary campaign.
And Edi Rama went on to become president of Albania, Joel. Yeah, so there you go. And the Socialists did not win that year, but in the next election in 2013, their improved performance in Skoda, where Doshi comes from, helped them secure a national victory and once more placed local power player Doshi in a position of influence.
Hey.
Fatos Lubonia, an Albanian writer and political commentator, described Doshi as a powerful ally for the ruling Socialist Party in Albania.
For many years, this is a quote, for many years, Doshi has been one of the most important allies of the ruling party of Edi Rama, a party that works for and with a minority of Albanians.
Now, his Australian visa, Doshi's that is, was cancelled on character grounds in 2015 by Home Affairs Minister, that was Dutz.
Yeah.
And he's not known to have ever been in the country since. So he got the flick 2015. The latest publicly available documents show that a 2020 appeal by Doshi to overturn his visa cancellation has not been successful. He told reporters he continues to fight the decision and is very much hoping for a positive outcome. Meanwhile, Doshi had gone on to become an independent MP and later chairman of a small party under whose banner he won his 4th parliamentary term in 2017.
Oh, good on him. He's doing well. He's doing well for himself. He's found an honest job. That's great. So the following year, the United States sanctioned Doshi for involvement in significant corruption. And as the April 2021 election neared, the growing pressure, including public statements by then US Ambassador Yuri Kim, finally forced him to resign. Oh, tragedy. Maybe people will start pressing charges. But he still wields considerable power. In videos posted on Facebook that year, as he declared support for Rama's Socialist Party, he said its candidates were his own hand-picked choices. The Doshi organisation with links to drug trafficking globally is just one of numerous Albanian drug syndicates active in Australia. So how can we stop these syndicates from increasing their power in Australia? Law enforcement must be fucking losing sleep over this.
Well, their answer is we can't.
That's a simple answer.
Just from a quick scan of their activities in Europe alone, the Albanian syndicates turn over billions in black profits and have a raft of foreign governments who look the other way while they laundered their money, as we mentioned before.
Yeah.
Some years ago, as I also mentioned before, Ndrangheta was rumoured to control 80% of Europe's cocaine market. Their turnover was estimated at $80 billion a year. And that alone makes them bigger than our largest publicly listed company, BHP Billiton. They're bigger than BHP Billiton. That's a great line from Godfather 2 when the Hyman Roth character says, with all the mafiosi around him, including Michael Corleone, says, we're bigger than US Steel. Well, they're bigger than our biggest company.
Yeah.
And the Albanian mafia, and Ndrangheta, we've talked a little bit about, there have been these sort of big super trials going on in Calabria that has restricted at least their overt practices. And because of these coalitions that they've got with the Albanian crime syndicates and others, the Albanians have moved substantially into these big European markets and, of course, now Australia. Huge in the United States too, with long associations with the Italian mafia. And so much of that trade, is now in the hands of the Albanian OCGs. Yep. And we can one thing we can do is tidy the immigration routes up. And as we've explored, Albanian criminals arrive in this country often with fake passports. And once this is discovered, they claim that they'll be persecuted if returned to Albania. And so they're given protection visas.
Well, they've all got very angry ex-girlfriends. Which is a very troubling thing.
But it's a common thing. And look, we should have those easily obtained protection visas for people who are genuinely fleeing persecution.
Yeah.
But what happens is these guys will just tie up the system for a very, very long time.
With
the best way to actually tidy that up is to deal with new cases. I say you've got all these long cases here with appeals and all that sort of stuff. All right, we'll get to those. But whenever we have something new come across our desk, we need to actually move on that really, really quickly. That's how you at least cauterize this, you sort of cauterize the problem that way. Yeah. So, and it is one of those things. It sort of needs a bit of direction from the minister, Claire O'Neill, the Home Affairs Minister now, Claire O'Neill. Yeah. And so those are directives that need to be made, and often with the advice of the department. This is the best way to deal with this. And look, we should have protection visas in this country. They're really important. I mean, Australia should be a place where people who are persecuted elsewhere around the world can come and feel some degree of safety. Yep. But when they're being rorted in this way, the best way to get rid of your backlog, strangely enough, is to kind of let that backlog alone and move on the new cases and move swiftly and rapidly.
Yeah.
Look, let's not forget what the problem is. Criminals are being sent to our country to commit crimes with virtual impunity. That's what it's all about. That's what the immigration rorting is all about. The 5-stage process we talked about before.
Yep.
The worst thing that can happen to them is they go to jail, and they don't fear jail. No. Jail's a holiday. And then they get deported. But once that has happened, 5 criminal syndicate members have arrived to take their place.
Uh-huh.
And beyond that, there is very, very little else that can be done. I mean, this is one of the things. We've had drug prohibition in the world now. I mean, let me go back. We had the Americans went through alcohol prohibition for just 10 years at an entrenched organised crime, particularly like Cosa Nostra, around that started essentially from bootlegging. Now, they got rid of that after 10 years. But it took them 80 years, another 60 years to get rid of or to diminish the influence of LCN. But drugs have been prohibited now for decades and decades and decades. And what there is now is so firmly entrenched, so moneyed up, so capable of infiltrating our political institutions, our financial institutions, that there's really no way of stopping them.
Yeah.
And that is whether they're Albanian or otherwise. That is just the way things are. Yeah. And a lot of these things you'll find that the Albanians or Ndrangheta, they invest in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
They're laundering money in Europe on on light commercial real estate and residential properties.
Yeah.
They're just the biggest problem they've got, Joel, is they don't know what to do with all the cash they get. That's their biggest problem.
Give it to me. I'm telling you guys, I'm happy to take it.
So that's it. They are too powerful to be brought down. When one leader dies or is jarred, one or more pops up to replace him. And you often see this. It was the same thing with when Guzman was arrested. You think, oh, okay, well, there won't be any more crime now. There won't be any more Sinaloa cartel. In fact, there was a rush of blood and people being executed all over the place because once the leaders go, there's destabilisation and people are aiming for the top themselves. A lot of blood. So that's when you do make these really significant arrests, or police do. That's what happens in the wake of it. There's people being popped left, right, and centre. So
what you're telling me is that gangland violence is basically a sort of antitrust action that is regulating the price of cocaine to go downwards.
Well,
because I'm on board with this.
That might be one of the effects. I don't know that I'd say to the Albanian that I'd say of the Albanian mafia that they're going to bring in cheaper coke to Australia.
Well, I think if that is an unfortunate side effect of some classic capitalistic competition, which may or may not involve a little bit of bloodshed, well, for one, I welcome our new Albanian warlords into this country to regulate the price of cocaine, which the ACCC has done fuck all about, and I don't think they're going to do anything about it.
Just some purity standards.
You know, we need some regulation in the sector, and if this is what it's going to take, then I'm all for it. I'm also saying this so they don't shoot me after this episode.
Yeah, look, we had this hand-wringing in Melbourne around the underworld wars of the turn of the century, and it's just like, oh my God, there's one being killed every couple of months.
Oh, gee.
You have a look at Sydney, have a look at Western Sydney now, and have a look at Melbourne now, particularly around the northeast and northwest, and it's like one a week. Well,
I tell you what, there's one solution to this: go and get yourself a nice bag, get a case of CBCO, and just sit down on the couch and just have a good night. It'll make you feel much better about things.
Well, it is a recreational drug.
It is a recreational drug.
If you're going to recreate, then you've got to go with that. And you have been listening. Have you been listening, Joel? You have been listening to the Conditional Release Program with your host, Jack the Insider, and Joel Hill.
That's us. Jack can be found on Twitter at Jack the Insider, and Joel, kind of me-ish, on at Crunchy Moses with a K. I don't really care for Twitter anymore, but I will still check my DMs, and every now and then I'll go on there and just be like, oh, Nazis are bad. We set up a Facebook page you can find fairly easily. Shitposting group is great. If you look up the Conditional Release Program shitposting, it's a lot of fun, lots of memes, lots of great posts from people who are really, really well-versed in the movement. And, some of that just dumb conspiracy shit. It's funny. But also, please share the episodes on social media because we do need your help in growing because there's a lot of people who like this stuff who don't know we exist. And that's your fault, so fix it. Thank you.
That is your responsibility. And we have a Patreon, as we said at the front of the program, to help keep this sustainable. It's bloody time-consuming, and we still have to pay rent. Help keep the lights on.
Yep, we do need that. For as little as $5 a month, you'll have access to all sorts of bonus content, including a weekly premium episode and a massive fucking backlog of some funny things, some interesting things, some topical things, and some things that are really fucking stupid. But we do make it worth your while. And honestly, if you were to listen to all the premium episodes back to back, you'd probably die. It's a lot of it. It's a lot of really there's the People's Treaty is still one of my favourite things we did. It was great.
And finally, all feedback, tips, and death threats should be sent to the Conditional Release Program at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, even if it's to say that the Albanian laundry has arrived. And how many shirts would we like?
Oh, I'd like as many shirts
as Albanian. Oh, the Albanian laundry.
Yeah, the one where they give you free money for no reason and give you cheap Coke because I told them to. Yeah, lower that price, boys. Thanks, Diego.
Thanks, listeners. Hope you've enjoyed it. See ya.
See you guys.
I don't think I ever want to talk to any of those people.
Fuck me, you guys are bastards.